one of the smartest things senior pastors ever say is, I want you to fail.
What mistakes are you seeing pastors make with creatives?
Greatest waste of time is church news. But there's still a lot of churches doing it. You've got 3 announcements, just do it. Preaching's brutal. Ministry's even more brutal. And I think if you're not up for a few difficult moments, then it's probably not your gig.
Who's John?
I'm a husband to my wife, a father to my children, and I will have my vengeance. I sound like
I will find you and I will kill you. And I just remember walking in there, I just felt the presence of God. I was like, I haven't felt this for years. You just walk into a space like that with rich history and the most beautiful architecture. It just draws your eyes to the Lord.
You can leave tomorrow. It is not your church. At the end of the day, you can leave tomorrow, the senior pastor can't. It's his church. The only way he leaves is in a casket or a firing loop.
Well, welcome back to the Kingdom Creatives podcast. You're right. There we go. Sorry about that. Welcome back to the Kingdom Creatives podcast. We have the man, the myth, the legend, Pastor John Cameron in the house. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
We just met, 20 minutes ago?
Well, yes.
But I feel like I've known you for a long time for some reason.
Oh, well, we've got mutual friends and we've been texting backwards and forwards. So, there's history now.
And I have seen you from a distance. I actually remember my first memory of you. We were pioneering a church with some friends of ours here in Brisbane a number of years ago, and you spoke at an ACC conference.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what year it was.
2018, I think.
Yeah, it would have been about that.
On the Sunshine Coast.
Yep, that's right, at
Calvary, yeah.
And you did a message, and I take you as someone who remembers details, so you might remember. You did a message about going away and being with the Lord. Do you remember this mountaintop?
The faraway God, yeah.
The faraway God.
Yeah.
So I don't remember much of the details that you spoke on, but I do remember that it moved me so much that I started this discipline in my life. Every 3 months, I'd go camping by myself, turn my cell phone off, get away, and hear from the Lord. And it radically changed my entire spiritual life.
Oh, man. Gee.
And that was my first memory of you.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking. Oftentimes, I think the method of how we communicate or media or whatever we do is oftentimes the same, but the message is oftentimes the same,
yes,
but the method changes.
Yeah.
My question to you was, how important is it for us to create things? So in your world, it's sermons.
Yeah.
Often the time you're a phenomenal communicator. In our worlds, it's making films, but the principle is the same. We make films to move people to action,
yes,
to do something.
Yes.
How important is it to create things that move people?
I think it's everything. If we're not connecting with people in a way that provokes, a change in their lives or, movement in their lives, well, I think all we're doing is educating heads. I for one think that, our faith is about being changed from glory to glory, right? Like there's this nature of an evolution, of progressing and journeying forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so what stops that from taking place is when you're emotionally disengaged from it. Like if my heart's not in it, I'm not going to do it. And I know we like to say our faith is not based on emotion, but motivation is based on emotion. Now, discipline is hugely important as well. But if someone is not disciplined right now, not proactively making the right choices in spite of their feelings, then when they engage with church, there's got to be feeling attached to that. Like, if you don't move people, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I suppose the jury's pretty quick to vote these days with especially video content. Like, if you put a video out in a church service and it's not engaging, people are just going to get on their phone.
Yeah.
And it'll happen from the front row all the way to the back row. So you're getting this huge
we're going to go there, great.
But with preaching, it's more like glazed eyes and I'm taking notes. But
And do you notice that as a preacher? Do you notice when you're the room's maybe disengaged, or like you see certain people and you go,
I know when I've got a room and I know when I don't.
Yeah, really.
For sure, 100%.
How does it affect you either way?
Well, because so if I've got a room, I can lock in on the concept.
Sure.
If I haven't got the room, then I've got to think about how I get the room.
Without telling them, you got to get it. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah.
That's not on your option list.
So you're thinking on the fly, how do I move? How do I shift this thing?
Yes. Yeah, how do I get this to engage? How do I captivate their attention? And I mean, as a preacher, there's 1,000 tools in your arsenal, from voice modulation to moving your body to changing your tone to telling a story to whatever. So there's a lot of different ways you can engage that process, but you have to be proactive.
Yeah.
And then once you've got people, then you can sort of sit in what you're trying to deliver and go with that. But then there's not just whether you have their attention, it's also whether you have their comprehension. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So you can
true.
you can have their attention, but they don't get what you're saying. And again, these are subjective measurements, but when people are when comprehending, like receiving it, what you're saying as well. And then if you haven't got that, well, that's a whole nother battle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not bad, maybe battle might be the wrong word, but you're trying to think about, how do I engage?
Yeah.
How do I say this in a way that you can receive it?
Without knowing them, though, like you don't know what their comprehension level is. Like everyone in the room's in a different.
No, I think there's a degree of intuition to that.
Yeah,
like
sure.
if you don't have that intuition,
yes,
you generally fit into that sort of informative teacher bracket.
Right.
And we're talking here about how you move people, and you're only going to get moved to the degree that you comprehend what's being said, Yeah.
That's so good. We have the benefit of doing that like by ourselves at our computer while we're editing, right? Because we got the time, we got the time to do that. We got the days and the hours, but you got to do it live in front of people real time. I've always found that really difficult preaching, to be honest.
Have you?
Yeah, I think I get kind of like in the moment on the spot, and I don't know, like I need a bit of time to just where do I want to go? So like when I'm editing a film, it's like, where do I want to go? And I get to test things and test things and move the waters a little bit. But when I'm preaching and I feel like I'm not moving anywhere or not getting anyone anywhere, it just frustrates me in real time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think on the flip side, a video is, you got to finish your product, then put it out, and then hope that you nailed it. Like,
hope people actually see it.
Like, you want to be edgy, you want to be current, you want to be relevant, but too edgy, and, especially in the church space, like, whoa, hey, where are we going here? There's like, I think there's, and I appreciate the storytelling aspect of videography, to be able to see how elements of a story contribute together just in your mind's eye and on a storyboard, and then to bring that to life in moving video form, for me, sounds tremendously difficult.
Yeah.
On that preaching that you're talking about, how do you, because this is probably valuable for like everyone in the aspects, obviously it's happening live for you and I don't know if it still happens today, it might earlier. How do you navigate, especially earlier on, that feedback of like when you think something's going to be awesome and like you're about to preach the best preach, do the best thing, but then it's like, that's not what happened. And then someone comes to you maybe even earlier in your ministry and people would give you that feedback. So I find like that's probably the most closest relation a creative with this thing, they pull their soul in design and they present him like, how good's this? And you're like, that's not it. Like, and you have to navigate that feedback. It's almost that same experience if you're on the platform. Maybe when you were younger, or maybe it happened last week. I don't know.
No, I mean, I think if you fail as if you bomb, like if it doesn't go well, it's like a public rejection.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to take on board, and probably even more difficult to take on board would be your own perception is that you did very well, and then you get off the pulpit and someone tells you that you didn't do very well. That's where I think the greatest conflict probably can come from. And I think that there's only one way to become good at preaching, and that is time under the belt.
Yeah,
like there's a reason why in Australia you have to do 100 or 120 hours before you get your provisional license, and that's because without a certain number of hours you are not at a certain level of comprehension. I think 10,000 hours, that whole kind of 10,000 hours principle, it does apply to preaching. You don't need a full auditorium to put in 10,000 hours.
Yeah, it's true.
Like I have preached hours and hours and hours and hours of sermons to empty churches, like many, many, many times. And I would argue if you can't do that, people say, I can't do that, I'm not getting any feedback. I'll be like, no, if you can't do it when no one's there, there's no way we can.
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, I'm not going to turn up to training, but I'll be good when the match is on. It's like, wait a minute. No, you have to be able to run this field with or without someone running at you. Like, we need to know that you're capable. And so I think, you have to go through that experience. But the rejection, that you get as a preacher is, of course, painful. I think we have to separate ourselves from, our identity is not our activity, and see that there's a line between the two, right? And then I think what creatives get coached in a lot, that preachers should be coached in a lot more, is the concept that I prepare something creatively and then I submit it as worship. And if that goes over well, great. But if it doesn't go over well, I always did it for you, Lord. And so therefore,
I actually love
how
that
goes is how it goes, But listen, preaching's brutal.
Preaching is brutal.
Ministry's even more brutal. And I think if you're not up for a few difficult moments, then it's probably not your gig.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that is very important to establish is mental disciplines for what you do when you finish. And I don't know what that exhaustion is like as a creative in other spaces, but what I can tell you is that as a preacher, whether you're preaching to 40 people or 20,000 people, you finish and you are emotionally empty, and to a certain degree, you're physically empty. So that's when you get that Elijah dynamic, like one word somebody says to you. I've many times finished preaching and someone said something to me and I just misconstrued it because I was so empty.
Yeah.
So there's that whole Elijah, Jezebel, I'm going to kill you, by this time tomorrow. And the guy becomes suicidal.
Yeah, wow.
And depressed. And I think, the Monday blues, they talk about it with preachers, is the Monday blues. It's a very real dynamic. I've been doing this for 32 years. So for me, that is dismissed within 1 minute of walking off the platform. And this is all I do. Every time I finish a message, whether I think I brought a revival, from on high, or whether I think that was like, oh my Lord, I wish that I'd never come here today. Whatever scale I feel my performance was, as soon as I walk off the stage, my mental discipline is, where are the three? So I just look for three people, either someone on stage, around me, someone in the church, and I say three phenomenally encouraging things, and I will go over the top. This is not, I would never lie. Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't say anything. I'd never say anything that's not true, but I would just make a point of making that person feel like they are so special. And by the time I'm done with three people doing that, like, oh, Pastor, your church is amazing. I love you. This is such an honor to be here. Yeah. Worship leader, that was incredible when you led that song. Drummer, man, you're only young. I couldn't believe you're up there doing that today. You got a great future. The hand of God's on your life. By the time I'm done with three, I'm out of my head analyzing my message.
That's so good, John.
But I think that really helps,
Just putting it like off yourself, like out of that space.
Yeah, just why would you go there? But we do, right? Like, we all do this.
It's so true.
Depression and melancholy and self-pity are like a burger when they feel so great going down, then you're like, why did I do that?
Well, the moment you pour your soul and life into anything, right, and then present it, it's like it's such a fragile thing sometimes.
You can't control that either.
Yeah.
John, you said your identity isn't what you do.
Yeah.
So who's John?
Yeah.
Because I know you as the preacher guy who's a phenomenal communicator. I know we got friends of friends, but who's John? Who are you? Like, if you were to go there, I want to know who you are.
Well, how do you answer that? I think, a first way I'd see myself would be as a follower of Jesus. And then I'm a husband to my wife, a father to my children, and I will have my vengeance. No, it sounds like
I will find you and I will kill you.
Yeah. Husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance.
That was good.
We've got to get you some voiceovers, actually.
Yeah, we could keep going. Yeah,
good Australian there. Yeah. But I think that's who I am. Look, I think I know I have a call of God on my life. So in that sense, it's not like that is part of my identity.
Of course.
I have a call of God on my life. That's not inseparable from who I am. But that sermon doesn't impact that. I remember preaching one time and I just felt firstly, I felt like I bombed. Secondly, I felt like I was totally empty. Like I was exhausted, just exhausted in every way. And I thought, man, I don't even know if I should have preached today. And maybe I shouldn't have. But I went up to this old preacher and I said to him, I just feel like I've got nothing to give right now. And he said something I've never forgotten. He said, there's still life in Elijah's dead bones. And as cute as that might sound, that is so true. If you have anointing on your life, whether you feel anointed or not, it's coming out, and that's crucial.
So what have you done in the past? You've led a large church in New Zealand. You've preached. How long? Like, tell me a bit about your story. Like, what have you done? Where have you been? Who are you?
Started a ministry full time when I was 19 years old.
19.
Wow.
Yeah, as a youth evangelist. Did that for 4 years.
Yeah.
2 years in, they made me like a supervisor. So I had 4 staff, then 6 that I managed for the next 2 years.
At 20.
At 21, yeah. Huh. 23, I became a youth pastor. And that was a church of like 600 people, I suppose. Was a youth pastor there for the
All
next
in New Zealand.
6 years. Yep, this is Auckland, New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. Auckland, yeah.
Yep. Youth pastored there for 6 years, and while I was there, helped my senior pastor with other projects within the church as well. Then 29 years old, my wife and I felt like God called us to go to Wellington, New Zealand, move there and pioneer a church. So took a team of 7 and...
Really?
Yeah, 5 others. So Gillian and I, 5 other people, no children. And just started a church in
Really?
a fluorescent yellow walled drama studio
Oh, let's go.
in Wellington, New Zealand, Newtown, Wellington.
Wow.
In the
At 29.
Toy Ficati Dance and Drama Centre. It was like, these days you'd probably call it like if Woke had a headquarters, that but
hey, we don't want to go there today.
But they were like hugely kind to us the whole way through.
Gotcha.
And we were there for a few years. Anyway, the church went from like 0 to 120, 120 to 400, 400 to 800, 800 to 1200 in the first 4 years.
Just grew like crazy.
And then just kind of we started to go other places and stuff happened. Yeah, it was a fun journey.
Yeah, how was that experience? How long were you doing that for?
20 years.
20 years?
Just short of 20 years, yeah.
Wow.
In that one church for 20 years?
Yeah, lead pastor there.
And if someone tried to get you to describe what you do now, what would you say? A bit of everything.
Yeah, right now I do coaching of church leaders.
Nice.
I do I guess high level problem solving, I guess, for Christian things. I do itinerant preaching. That would be the 3 things that I do right now. And then I guess, fourthly in that banner of content creation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very nice.
So when you were in your senior pastor role,
yeah,
what do you wish? So obviously you would have had creative teams. You would have had a whole bunch of creatives that were on your teams, right? What do you wish they understood about your role and the pressures you have as a senior minister? Like, was there ever times where it was like, oh, if only you knew the conversation I just had, or if only you know X, Y, and Z? Like, what do you wish creatives knew? Or even if you got any examples, like any stories, like.
I can't really think of anything, to be honest with you. I think I got a lot better at managing creative people over the 20 years. Like, I think that was I think it's probably a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Like,
yeah, sure.
I've always found I work very well with creative people, but I probably didn't have a mature skill set for how to long-term manage creative people in my early days.
Yeah, sure.
So then I think that was an area of significant personal growth for me. I think churches have huge tensions in the creative space. Firstly, I think most churches don't understand how long any creative endeavor takes. and so then there is this expectation of why isn't the flyer out tomorrow? Mm-hmm. I think for creatives, there's the tension of sometimes you do just have to have the flyer out tomorrow. Like, sometimes it's
yeah,
like,
that's true.
We don't have the budget,
Yes.
the time, the luxury for everything you do to be a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just need it to tell us that Easter's coming and people need to turn up. Like, that's it. Just give me words on page and put it through a color printer. Let's just move. Like, sometimes that's just what you need. I think in a mature state, mature creative environments within churches delineate between rankings of jobs, and you have a color palette and a look and feel guide, and you just do it, right? Like whatever the right language is for those things. But you get what I mean. But I think understanding that there are just realities is important. A lot of church creatives have never worked outside, and so I think one of my best friends ran a very large and very successful agency in New Zealand, and then when he came to work for me, it was great.
Yeah, he understood.
Because I think the creative team at some times would just be like, "That's not how creatives work," and then it's kind of like a trump card. Like when you're
it fully is.
when you're a senior pastor, you're like, "Oh,
unleash the hounds,"
and then and then Nathan would be like, "Yeah, no, that is how it works. Sometimes you just got to get this thing done." So he kind of called it out. Called it out a little bit. And
that's so helpful. True, and that's part of like what we're trying to achieve is come on shoots with us, like come and watch how we design. And sometimes the guys are in here like, oh, we're never going to get this done, and sometimes we have the luxury to sit around and look up into the sky and dream. It just depends on life and what gets in the way and what needs to get done.
The best comparison I've seen since being at the church, when you get the last minute request of something, it's exactly the same no matter how much they're paying outside of the church. Whether it's like they're paying $1,000 or $100,000, they still have the same email. Hey, we forgot to ask for this and we need it tomorrow.
Oh, you mean like our clients?
Yeah, like our clients as well. Like,
I remember I was part of something where you guys got that 2-week notice on a 3-minute video. I think in late June of this year. Yeah.
What's that one?
INC, we collabed.
Oh, really?
John wrote the script.
No.
But anyway, so I mean, it happens, doesn't it?
It's very much the same. Do you know? Does anything come to mind? Like, I'm interested to hear your stories. Like, I'm just a big story guy. I think I learn a lot more through stories. But do you remember any times where there was any because you mentioned you had plenty of times in the early days where you didn't know how to communicate to them, or you didn't know how to translate what they were saying? Like, do you remember any times where it was just like, and then it was able to come to some level of agreement?
I think for me, it was probably more that I didn't understand. I probably didn't. For me, the tension would have been around, here is the potential. How do you draw that out? And what's the right avenues for that to be drawn out? And I think that's a whole skill set, I think, that we need to look into at some point, because pastors are not trained on how to release creativity within their church. And so it's sort of like this, you get it right or you get it wrong. We got it right sometimes, we got it wrong other times. And I think learning those lines, learning those strategies was incredibly important for my formation. And I don't think I, found that there was probably like an area where I'd be like, that was not, that didn't go quite according to the way that I wanted it to a few times.
Yeah.
I think because people need to be pushed, and by that I use that word with the question mark on the end, because it's like people need to be like, you have got this, go. And then you got to watch that doesn't get to a point where people feel overburdened by that belief. And so that's a real tension, I think, that we probably knocked into a few times and had some win-losses with it. I reckon one of the smartest things senior pastors ever say to their creative team is, I want you to fail. I will laugh with you if we fail. It's okay.
Let's go for it.
I'd rather that you. I mean, probably I spent the last 5 years as a lead pastor just saying to creatives in the church, just go out there and fail. Like, I would love that you failed because you've tried. Just don't fail because you didn't try.
Yeah, really good.
Like, the church is so resilient. So resilient. I mean, you name it, it's happened, right? Like the AC goes out, people still come back. The lighting goes out, people come back next week. The worship leader is way off key, people still come back next week. The preacher sucks, people come back next week. Like, it's just so resilient, this thing. It doesn't die quickly. And I think we feel like any one song that didn't go right, any one video that didn't go right, or sermon, we're going to lose the whole thing. You're like, no, it's actually going to be just fine, you know? And getting that into everyone that's involved is super helpful. So I think creatives need to understand you can fail and it doesn't matter. Lead pastors need to know that failure is fine. Like it's part of the creative process. The greatest releases of creative talent that I see in Christendom are able to celebrate even when it's clearly a disaster. Like, and I don't mean that by, trying to say something went well when it didn't go well. Because that's not...
being honest and for sure.
But they're like, wow, that's great. We're on our way, That everyone knows takes us to a yes, you know?
Water off a duck's back.
Just get up, go again.
How do you think creatives can communicate, like, to their senior pastors? Because oftentimes I think, the video guy or the graphic designer has this idea, but they take it and it gets shut down. That's the message I hear all the time, that creatives get shut down. But maybe they're not really communicating the right way. Like, how do creatives communicate their creative ideas back to the senior pastor, do you think?
Don't communicate it to the senior pastor unless the senior pastor is a creative.
Yeah, it's so true.
Wow.
Like, just don't do that. I think the creativity of our church was always exceptionally strong, but what people probably need to know is that 90% of the interactions were with my wife, not with me. Because Gillian has a performing arts background. Like, she started in theatre when she was like 8 years old.
Is that why you picked the original theatre?
No. It may have helped. I don't know. Get the door open. But Gillian. So Gillian always did everything. She oversaw everything creative from beginning to end. So
gotcha.
So then
So you didn't really want to like it was hard for you to sit and listen to a creative stumble their way to their idea. Like,
I think I was probably if there's a spectrum. I was probably well down the creative competent spectrum.
Yeah, okay. You understood.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my sermons are really like creative.
100%. That's why I brought it up at the start.
Because I write them. I mean, I see them and then I just write what I see.
Yeah, right.
So then for me, it's poetry and it's.
But you see them first.
I write them as I see them. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a mind's eye video for me that just gets recorded.
Really?
Like on a keyboard. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's about 3 steps before that.
Yeah.
Or 4 steps before that. But once it comes to actually writing it, I see it. And then I write it down. And everything is written down. I mean, I don't use the notes once I get there largely, but phrases, cadence, pauses, stories, it's all thought through from beginning to end.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So it's very like regimented.
Yeah. So
but
then
it might feel more free in the moment when you're presenting.
Yeah, and you get up there and throw the plan out as well.
Yeah.
Just
nuts.
Yeah.
That's got to be a thrill.
Yeah, I'm confident. I'm comfortable with that.
You've been doing it a while. I was going to throw back to your buddy Nathan. Is that right? The creative guy. How important was it having some outside perspective come into what can be a bit of a vacuum in church creative teams, or really any organization? If someone came in here to our company, it'd be great to have different perspective. But how important was it to have some outside professional experience coming into the church?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, firstly, let me say his predecessor was also outstanding.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Just love him to pieces, absolutely. But I think what Nathan did was he came in through the revolving door. Like, I talk a lot about the revolving door. So, like, the problem with us is that we're in a room, we're in a church, we're in a space, and we get accustomed to where things are. So then, the best thing any leader can do is just walk out the revolving door and walk back in, and use that as an opportunity to go, if I was walking in cold today, taking over this church today, taking over this creative team today, what would I do? And what would he do? What would she do? And
right.
and often like, well, if she took over, she would do bang, bang, bang. It's like, well, why aren't you doing it? So I think what Nathan did was he came in and he was just like, okay, there's several things here that are just not working. I think he did advocate for the creative team in spaces in a way that needed to be. He really championed earmarking 4 or 5 creative projects a year, or maybe less, maybe 2 or 3. Yeah. But he fought for the need for boundless creativity to be exerted in certain moments of the calendar to feed our creative team's soul.
Yeah, great.
And then he also went to them and said, guys, I'm going to get that for you, but we can't just do that all the time.
Yeah. Like, there's work to be done.
This is not, there's no Coca-Cola budget here. This is people's giving.
This is the kingdom. Yeah.
This is people's giving.
Well. Yep.
We've only got a certain number of salaries, so I'll get you that space, and that's going to be banked. Like, you'll know we've got this certain number of weeks to work on exciting, really top-end projects, but you got to give me a flyer tomorrow for this, or, a video good. For that.
Yeah, it's true.
I think what the other thing that churches do very, very common is they do, and please don't take this the wrong way, anybody listening to this podcast, but they do pointless creative stuff. Like, I personally think the greatest waste of time in church life is church news. But there's still a lot of churches doing it.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy that they still do it, eh?
It's like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
You got 3 announcements. Just do it.
Yeah.
Give me. Yeah. And you got 30 seconds. Go. Like, we all know it's coming up.
Yeah. Right? Just get it done. Just get it done.
Get it done. Get out.
Or put it on your Instagram reels or something. Yeah. Most people on the toilet, in that part anyway, they're scrolling Instagram reels. Just give them the church news on the reels.
Yeah. Why are we spending hours on people in front of?
Yeah, I fully get it.
Secret cameras.
So awesome.
Yeah, well, that's like the conversation we're having with that. We had a guy on who's been doing church media for 15, 20 years, Brady Shearer. And he was saying like how he started was he used to film church news for like 1,000 churches.
Wow.
In Canada. So what he would do is like he started by saying, "I'll do your church news," but he'd be the guy in front of the green screen doing their church news, script, everything. And then he'd send it to them and that's their church news. So it was like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, I was shocked that they were just cool with some random. He's like, yeah, they loved it. But he's like, I had to change that because I'm like, is this going to be cool? But then churches still do it, so it's funny.
You feel like people in the congregation will be going, "Excuse me, who is this guy?"
Yeah, who is this guy?
Where does he? I've never seen him. Is he in the fort? Is he single? Like,
yeah. But funnily enough, now he's like this big deal in the space.
Yeah, Brady.
Yeah, you've probably seen his stuff pop up.
I've seen him stuff a
lot,
so
he's just applying that same principle, but to Instagram Reels now and just helping creatives. It's pretty cool, actually.
Oh yeah, yes. Okay, so he does a lot of stuff about why would you do creativity. I watch all those. I follow him.
Yeah, he's good. He's great.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And he was telling us how he started. I thought it was so fascinating, like this church news idea,
Yeah.
To switch it back up a little bit, how do you, or what are you seeing, because you're in more of a coaching role now, I'm assuming you're seeing more pastors and more context outside of your own church, but what mistakes are you seeing pastors, senior leaders, team leaders make with creatives? Like, how are they treating them that you think could be done differently, or how do you see it being done well? It doesn't have to be a bad thing, because creators are unique. They're a unique breed, man. Like they are unicorns, and I think they have to be treated as such.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what I see, where I see the challenge points in just where my travels are taking me, so that is always subjective to where I've physically been.
Yeah, sure.
But where I see the challenge points would be that there's still a lack of clarity around what the win looks like. You have to be able to define for a creative.
Like. Yeah,
I think if I was a worship pastor in a church, I would be saying to my lead pastor, can we agree on less than 5 things that the win looks like? I will teach them to my worship team. And then if you think the 5 is not right, could you come to me and we'll change those? So instead what you find is that you still have this worship leader up there trying to have a crack, and you see a clearly unhappy senior pastor on the front row, Now, I always tell people don't look at the lead pastor if you want to know if you're doing well. If you're on the platform, don't look at the lead pastor.
Figure it out later.
Well, let me get this straight. He's thinking about seating. He's thinking about someone with a police record, like a child
So
person
true, man.
who's 4 rows back.
Yep.
He's thinking about sound. He's thinking about air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
He's thinking about his own sermon. He's thinking about something he just got told. So if you're looking at them and they look frowning and you're like, I suck. Well, that is like the worst way to go at it. But you can see moments of direct exchange, right? Like the intentional exchange between lead pastor and worship team, where you're clear that this person is trying to intentionally communicate you're not doing a good job. And I would say, well, what does that mean? What is the good job? What do you want? What don't you want? For the worship team, it is not your church. You can leave tomorrow. It is not your church. You are there to serve the vision. We're probably going to get some negative comments from this, but it is not your church.
Good.
Good.
At the end of the day, you can leave tomorrow. The senior pastor can't. It's his church. The only way he leaves is in a casket or a fire engine. So,
So this is what I mean when I was saying to you before, like,
Yeah.
what is it that creatives don't understand that senior pastors go through? You pinned it straight away. Like, they're thinking about the sex offender 4 rows behind who's
They
come
are.
in. They're thinking about, oh my gosh, something's just happened in the car park. They're thinking about, is the aircon, like, and that's what I mean. We oftentimes as creatives have this one amazing idea we think is going to bring revival and change the world, but the senior minister's got so much, going on.
yeah. And they've also got an ethos.
Yeah.
Like they have a paradigm of ministry.
Yeah, it's true.
And you're out there listening to this other stream of praise and worship. It doesn't have their paradigm. And at the end of the day, you can offer that to your lead pastor, but you can't impose it. It's not your church.
Yeah, right.
So even if you think that's the most anointed thing since sliced bread,
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell people there's only 2 ways to change a church, through permission or rebellion. So either you're given permission or you rebel. And if you're not given permission, don't go the other route. The scripture says rebellion says the sin of witchcraft in. And I don't like controlling leadership. I don't. But there is a need for these principles to be clear. People have got to know them, right? Like, it's got to be out there.
Yeah.
You don't just get to just hijack this baby. It's not your baby.
Yeah, no. 100%.
But I think that but leading up through exposure, have a listen to this. I like this. I think this is what young people are into. That's important. But again, it's like that open-handed thing, right? And then it's up to that lead pastor to do what they want. The other thing that I would say, and this is just good to hear, sometimes the difference with a coach and is that a player or let's go senior pastor worship team, a 23-year-old thinks that this way of doing this song is going to mean Shekinah glory will fill our church. And
I've been that 23-year-old, yeah.
Yeah, and then the lead pastor's like, no. And then you're like, he's trying to quench my gift. He actually
He's
just trying to
spiritually abusing
save
me.
you from a road crash.
Yeah.
So true.
And so sometimes you just got to go, okay, well, I just got to roll with that.
Yeah.
How would you, I don't know if you've probably gone through this in your life as well, especially I find with creatives, like we were talking about before, how it's like some of them would feel their souls in this, whether it's the worship leader, they're like, this is a call from God on my life. I'm 100% certain on this.
Yeah.
Or they produce this amazing work of art, they call it this video and stuff. And then it's like, no, they kind of pull their identity almost into it. Do you have any tips or practical ways of separating that of creative's worth is not in the stuff they do? You know what I mean? It's in Jesus.
Yeah.
Do you have any things that you draw from or ways to practically help people remember that or get there?
I mean, one of the most important stories in scripture for me is when David is left out in that back paddock when Samuel comes to meet all of Jesse's sons.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he puts 7 who have been born through one mother in front of the prophet, but forgets about David, right? Oh, I forgot about him. No, he was an embarrassment. You left him in the back paddock. But still, even in the back paddock, David, who was a worship leader, whose worship leading gift is actually what brought him into national prominence, was bought, and stood in front of Samuel an anointed king. And I think if the hand of God is on your life, God is going to find you.
So true.
So it's not a question of whether your gift is going to get recognized. It's whether you're going to be worthy.
Yeah, wow.
Like, I mean, I've never really studied this or looked into it much, but one of the things my wife, we're both huge Brandon Lake fans. I think every Christian is.
Yeah, he's the man.
And his story is wonderful, but from what I understand, he didn't make the big time until he was in his 30s. And we can argue I'm saying he's now one of the most prominent worship leaders of our generation.
Oh yeah, I can say he's big time.
He's big time.
He's big time.
But he didn't become that until pretty late into his journey.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, he's in his for a worship leader, you feel like tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
It's like, it's
so true.
you could easily think you're done by 45 or whatever. But here he is. He's just now, I don't know how old he is, but he's clearly not a child anymore. And he's just absolutely doing so well. But I think in many ways, it's like he was ready.
Yeah, true.
He was just ready. And I feel like I see a lot of people, whether preachers or creatives or whatever, opening doors that it's just not their time yet.
Yeah.
And you've got to wait your time, I mean, Matthew 20:23, Jesus said, "Those places are not mine to grant. They belong to those for whom they've been prepared by my Father." That's in response to the James and John asking for a throne on his left and a throne on his right. And I think there's something in us that's got to realize, Jesus is acknowledging the final yes isn't mine to give. Like, I like you. I want to give you a shot, but if it's a no from heaven, it's a no from me. That's what Jesus is saying. And sometimes when you're getting a no, you're looking at your senior pastor. I would say look at your Savior.
Yes.
Like, say, God, why is it not my time yet?
That's so
it's a
good.
far more empowering question.
Yeah, that is. That's
and
awesome.
oftentimes we're not ready. Like, what's the saying? Like, your gift or talent or personality will get you in the room, but your character
will keep you there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's so true. Like, some of the things that the Lord has blessed us with in the business and the connections we've made, if you gave me that at 23, 24, even, when I thought that I deserved it,
Yeah.
man, I would have messed it up completely and solely. So it's really good. Like, it's not your time until he says it's your time. I love that. How do you know when it's your time? Like, how does somebody know, no, this is my time now? What if their senior pastor got it wrong? And how do they, and it is their time? Do we just trust the Lord that he'll speak to them? Like, how do we know it's our time?
I would argue that if you're walking in right relationship with God and doing the right steps, and your lead pastor, I mean, this is, again, some people are not going to like this.
But we love that.
But I would argue that if you take any decision like that to your spiritual leader and they say no when you feel it's a yes, and you honor that submission to spiritual leadership, that God is going to work that out for good in your life anyway. I fully 100% believe that. Like, I would not walk that back at all.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I completely agree. And even if your spiritual oversight does get it wrong, God just has a way. He has a way.
He always does.
And I also believe in a God of visions and dreams, right? So, I mean, if we want to get over to the flip side, it's like, because I've watched preachers walk into large arenas, and I'm sure it's the same for worship leaders. I've never been a worship leader for some fairly self-evident. No.
Okay.
I haven't tried.
I was going to ask you. Yeah, I haven't tried. I've never tried.
Try every now and then. Yeah. I can get 3 notes and 3 words, and then I'm out. People are like, wow, that was great. Yeah, that's all I got. But I've watched preachers, and I have watched. I've watched worship leaders and preachers, especially when you go to arenas. Like, when you get above 5,000 people.
Yeah, right.
Some people walk into that room and it's like, I have arrived. And it's like things slow down around them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like things slow down. Like, somehow space seems to be there and life, and like they just nail it. And then I've watched other people go into those, and it's like their words come out of their mouth and it's like they're still trying to communicate to 100 or worship lead to 100, and I think the difference is, you know, I remember a worship leader a long time ago in the 90s. His name was Kevin Prosh. And he said to my friend, I was standing right beside my friend at the time. My friend said to him, "How do you lead people so far into the presence of God?" And Kevin said to my friend, he said, "You'll never lead anybody further than you've been yourself."
Yeah, so true. So
and
true.
I think, you know, this is where visions and dreams live, you know, like when you're in God's presence like that, you know, you live there. When the Holy Spirit comes near, dreams and visions come alive. Like that is the most evident thing in Scripture. Joel, it's again the book of Acts. When I pour out my Spirit, young men will dream dreams, old men will have visions. And when God comes near, so then for me, moments of encounter are also moments of vision, moments of dream. And in that process, you're moving into that place where you are ready. And then you walk into the room, and when I said you've arrived, it's not like, you know, you've finally arrived with the big kids table. It's more like, I was born for this.
Yeah, sure. Like in a good way, you mean? Yeah. Like
I'm calm, I'm composed, I like it. Let's go. Let's do this.
Yeah.
You see that, and you know, a certain amount of nerves will shut down the Holy Spirit's flow in your life, you know?
Yeah, it's oftentimes like when you don't want something, that's when God's like, "Oh, are you ready now?"
Yeah.
You know, like, "Oh, okay, I can work with that." You know,
Yeah.
rather than you wanted this your whole life, or you know, you got all this agenda.
Yeah.
What qualities do you look for in particularly young creators? But if you were to start a church tomorrow down here in Fortitude Valley, what qualities would you look for?
That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
That'd be
Fortitude Valley.
wild.
I like Fortitude
It'd be
Valley.
wild. Yeah, we actually started our church when we started there in the valley. It was wild. We had like a creative studio there that we started at, and then we
started a church in the valley?
moved down. Yeah, and we moved down.
What was it called?
Collective Church. Do you know James Schleusner at all?
No,
No.
I don't think so.
Do you know John Hunt?
Yes.
John Hunt's son-in-law. So married
okay,
Larissa.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had a church there, and then we moved to the James Street Cinema. Completely died the whole thing because it was just this dark, dingy room. I remember one Sunday, like James and Larissa were away, and I was preaching, and 7 people came.
Oh.
7 people came.
Location.
I almost packed up for lunch.
Location.
What was that? It's like even Hillsong did it in a nightclub, and they had the cages where people dance in. So it's still like above their worship stage. And they made jokes like day one. They're like, "So that's the premium tie the seat."
The premium, and the money's still falling down.
And the floor's all sticky because it's a nightclub. They've bought the theater, the old theater
it's beautiful.
now.
They've done a great job with it.
That's awesome.
Great job.
Yeah.
But my question was, if
Does
you
it
were
have cages?
Oh, yeah. Not anymore. If you were to start a church tomorrow, what sort of qualities would you look for in a the next guy who's going to take on the whole creative department or whatever? Like, what are some things that are important to senior leaders for creatives in churches?
Team building. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, if you're going to lead a creative, what lead pastors are drawn to, if you're a creative listening to this, lead pastors are drawn to people who build teams who together enjoy the experience of serving Jesus in that local church. What they are turned away from or turned off by is creatives who have large needs to do creative projects that build their profile, and they trod on other people in the process of getting the reputation they desperately want to desire, they desperately want for themselves. What we want is what every senior pastor is team builders. Build others, draw out the gold in people, and build a team that together does something great, and show us how we can together bring, you know, beautiful creativity to life, but not in a way that strips people. Don't use people on your way to the top.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love that. We've seen media, social media change landscapes, change countries. I mean, we just came back from America. Media has the power to change things.
Yeah.
How do you think media is changing the church?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, social media is having a huge impact on the church right now. I mean, it's a seismic impact, and I think that is not entirely a good
No.
thing.
No.
And that's, I think what's needed is probably the awakening to the potential of people who are advocates for the church to speak on social media. Similarly to the way we've seen in America this election, it's been like for a long time, depending on what your political views are, but the left have dominated not just mainstream media, but social media. And if you took a right-wing perspective, you were outcast for it. Now
you're cancelled,
Yeah. Now in America, the right wing has a voice. And I think in the church scene, it's like if you've been hurt by the church, negative about the church, want to bag on the church, like that crowd is loud.
Yeah, true.
But the truth is, the church is a beautiful place. It's the bride of Christ. It is how people get their lives turned around. There's more right with the church than there is wrong with the church. There are very few bad players in the church. For every bad player, there are 10,000 good players. But people are also flawed and duplicitous and not altogether whole. And so even the best of people have bad days. So I think, I'm not surprised that there's issues in the church. I'm surprised the church works at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's built by people, right? It's what's great about the church? Oh, the people. What's awful about the church? People. It's the same package, but this is where we turn lives around. And the West was built because of the church.
Yeah.
Most of the good things in the world where you want to go are the fruits of Christianity in the church. And so we shouldn't allow the negative side of that social media thing to. I think we all need to find our voice and find a way of saying the church is great and it's a beautiful place. And I'll fight for the church as long as I have breath.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, even maybe the last 1 or 2 generations now don't really know a world without TikTok or social media or Instagram. Like they don't know that world anymore. Like millennials, we kind of like transitioned when we were in, high school or whatever. But there's 2 generations now. My daughter's not ever going to know a world without social media and bombardment and things coming at them. How do you think like the church can use that? Because it's not going away, so we know that. So how does the church use social media in general, to communicate to the next generations that aren't coming? They're here now,
Yeah, and you guys would know this way better than me. But obviously, we've moved from like celebrity to influencer to micro influencer. So I think now what each church, each Christian, especially every minister in every church, needs to see themselves as is a micro influencer. Like if I had 5 more hours in my week, I would be using it to record reels.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I think you will not please everybody. Your comment section will be mixed. People will hate you. That's just, there's going to be a portion of people that do that. But I think what you got to respect is that unless the people who love you get to hear your voice, what they're hearing is from somebody else. Yeah. So I would say find the inner fortitude to realize that social media is the wild, wild west. And people are literally gunning each other down over territory. So if the Christians don't take any territory, then the other side is taking it. So we just got to get out there and look, it's not guns blazing. So the metaphor lacks a bit of, but you just got to put your view out there.
Yeah, sure.
And accept that not everyone's going to like it and then say it anyway, I mean, yeah. We could
go there. We could go.
I could tell you stories.
Spending some time in Texas, it was truly and literally guns blazing, like in many different ways. And, the culture was very in your face in Dallas, particularly. Our church, we had to be in the Senate. We had to have people out protesting. That we do justice runs. Like you have to, because it's right in your face. But coming back home, I've noticed how, I'm gonna say it, like how melancholy the church has been. In terms of like, we're good. We don't need to put our opinions out. We don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to put anybody off. But we've seen the other side win in so many cases in terms of culture and belief, and abortion is okay now, and all of these things that the culture has overtaken because the church has been so melancholy, and so we don't want to offend anybody. But in that, I think we've lost conviction and like what Jesus stands for.
Yes.
And I think social media has such a powerful way of not just getting your opinion across, but again, move people to action, help move people towards Jesus when the culture is so attacking you in every other way. So, Yeah, there's no way to get around it now. I mean, like we say when we want to approach a church and say, "Hey, you should sign up with us." Like, there's no option now. Like, you can't not do media anymore. You can't not be on the platforms anymore because you will fall behind. Like, and churches are falling behind. And so, I think the translation from what we believe to what people will watch on social media is it's so important. And it's cool to see on your socials too how you're putting up more reels and you're kind of adapting to what's not always been. It's been different, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I would do a lot more if I wasn't a one-man band
exactly.
who's working 70 hours a week.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, and literally. So I think for me, you know, that's, you know, in fact, I had a meeting very early this morning and obscenely early this morning, but, you know, I mean, I will get to this eventually because I think that those of us who have, and I don't have a large profile, but those of us who have profile need to be using it a lot stronger 100%. Than we are today. I mean, I mean, there is just lunacy in our culture right now. And we find too in Australia and New Zealand, you know, which is obviously my two most beloved countries in every way, we're seeing a basis of legislation that's untested, that, you know, is preparing to essentially prosecute Christians for things that they say in line with their beliefs, especially around, you know, transgenderism and homosexuality. I have only, in every experience I've ever been in the church, only ever seen people treated very, very well.
Agree.
But there needs to be a line drawn between I treat you well and I publicly endorse what you do.
Yeah.
And you know, we're all out there. There are lots of people trying to figure out what we do with that, but I'm certainly of the opinion, and I'm always open to new information. But my belief is, if we don't advocate for our view in the public space, that all it takes is one or two clicks to the left with governments, and some of the groups will begin to exert rights over Christianity that are extremely dangerous.
And they can do it too, because we don't have a constitution in this country. We don't have personal rights or constitution, really.
No, and we have a basis of legislation starting to build up. These
and it is a building. That's what it is.
It's a conversion therapy bills, you know, are being put in there that are really hate speech bills. Well, the abdication of freedom of speech bills. That's what they are. Because no one's getting electrotherapy. This hasn't happened for 40 years. It's a joke.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we're making it illegal for Christians to say what they believe. And that is extremely dangerous and wrong. It's wrong.
It is.
We only have a free society if we can express our free speech, and it's only free speech if what you say other people don't like.
It's true. It's very true. I almost wore my Trump hat today. I should have wore it. I almost did. I haven't been game enough to wear it through the city yet, but I'm thinking one.
Have you got a MAGA hat?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love it. It's kind of cool. We are in that stage where we're seeing a lot of this legislation come through, but we're also seeing a shift.
Yeah,
and that's why I think podcasts are so important.
I agree.
And grassroots content like what you do, like what many people do, because that's what my generation and the generations under us care about, is like just real, authentic. They want to listen to people who have, you know, sensible opinions, because it's gone so far.
Yeah. You know what, Sam? Do you know what it is? The culture is rewarding bravery. The culture is rewarding bravery.
I like that.
Right now, if you stand flat-footed,
I like that,
and say what you believe, you'll cop flack.
Yeah.
And then thousands of people will reward you for your bravery.
Yeah, so true.
What people don't like is polish.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I'm literally. Julian and I talk about this nonstop, because it's like, you know, if I was to pastor again, how would I preach? Because I feel like, because what people want is just like, man, none of us. You're not going to get all of us. When I started ministry 30 years ago, you got everyone other than 5% of the population.
Yeah.
You hop on a plane, even in New Zealand, and people are like, you're a pastor? Wow, that's amazing. Now it's like, oh, can I change seats?
Yeah.
So you're not going to get everybody anymore. So now it's more like, if you stand flat-footed and you just say, this is what I think, man, people reward you for just telling them the truth. Like, as you see it and putting yourself out there in the world, the culture's rewarding bravery. Don't you think?
I think so. But but I'm probably on both ends though. I would say, like, I think they would
Okay.
they would call it brave to be like, oh, this is who I've always been. I've always been a woman. You know, that's so brave. You know, that's so, oh wow, and you know, and I think there's both sides of that. But I think it wasn't fair on the right, but it's happening more and more on the right, which I agree with. Yeah. How do you think senior pastors and ministers can be brave and be bold in the public image particularly? Because, you know, it's one thing to have a conversation over coffee and tell them that you love Trump. It's another thing to stand up and go, no, this is what we believe at this church. This is what we believe. We believe that killing babies is a sin. It's wrong. And we're going to stand up for that. We're going to protect mothers. We're going to protect the sanctity of marriage. Like, how important is it to do that from the platform and from the platform? Because this is a platform too.
Yeah.
How important is it? And also, how do ministers do it? Because I just run a media agency. I don't have all the things on my mind. How do ministers do this?
Well, I think the first thing is we've got to give ministers a little bit of a break, right? Like the thing to remember, there have never been higher resignation rates from senior pastoring than there are in the last 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, more people have left the ministry in the last 3 years globally than in any other season before. Why is that? Because it's a new world.
Yeah, true.
We've gone from a peacetime footing with the culture to a wartime footing. And so a different emotional resilience is needed, a different set of courage. I feel for pastorally gifted pastors who are now having people coming to them saying, why aren't you in the fight? You know, get out there and say strong opinions. I feel for them because, I mean, I'm not a pastorally oriented pastor, but I feel for them because they hate conflict.
Yeah, true.
And then suddenly they're being asked to
Stand up for
effectively,
true.
effectively the job didn't go anywhere, but the job description totally changed. And so then, you know, it's like that's a real thing. So give these guys a bit of a leave pass.
Yeah.
And the second thing I would say is I don't think we should push senior pastors beyond their faith and their grace zone. But then what I do think is that we should get their back. You know, I mean, I have been in the lonely minority, and it's not a nice place to be.
No, I can't imagine it would be.
If you put your neck out there on a moral issue, and then the rest of the church doesn't, personally, I can tell you that's quite a painful place to be.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and I think the best thing we can do is just have each other's back. The culture can only cancel a church if the church lets it.
That's good.
Like if we all as the church stand up with the church, then it's really a comments war.
Yeah,
And
it is.
You know, it's
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know, but my perception is that's the way it rolls. So if we all just like the general prevailing Australian New Zealand attitude towards any pastor who says anything like, I believe unborn children are, you know, a gift from God.
Gift,
Yeah. Should that abortion is killing and murder of an unborn life. And then the media come after that guy. The general prevailing attitude is, oh, so glad they didn't come after me.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I think we just got to change.
He maybe went too far there. So maybe he's got what's coming to him.
There's 1,000 excuses. And I think that somehow we need to stop that. Yeah. Because we will fall as individuals, but we will thrive as one. And I think it's we can get their back. And then I think senior pastors do need to find the courage. I think that it is an ultimatum time. It's now or never. They're coming for the churches, coming for our rights, coming for this generation. But the world is in the middle of a shift. And I think if we don't get on board with that we're in trouble.
100%. It leads to my other question. Like, what do you think or see the future of the church looking like? Because we're shifting and shifted in many ways, especially since COVID and seeing what could happen. But like, what's the future of the church look like? Because I don't think it's it right now. Like, I don't know. That's a bold statement, and like I'm not in it, so I don't want to throw shade, but I feel like there's a shift been needing to happen for a long time, and it is happening. But what do you think the future looks like?
Let's start answering that by looking at what's happened in the last season of time. The COVID era, the persecution of the church down under, and the seismic challenges that we have had, in very public sort of environments, has led to in the church a generation of what I would call wilderness theology. Winepress theology, where Gideon is down in a very, very safe place threshing wheat. And effectively, he has adapted his activity to a place that will keep him safe. And I am very, very concerned that post-COVID, some of the let's rethink this whole picture is a legitimate reaction or people trying to find their way through some genuine issues the church needed to mature its way through. And I think another big, big chunk of it is that if we do church this way, no one is going to come after us, right? Now what we're seeing is that, like I've got access to hundreds of churches' data right now. And I can tell you that the church in Australia is growing. Like churches everywhere are growing. 2024 is a year where many, many churches, I'm talking lots and lots of churches, are having growth rates
Really?
that exceed 20%.
Wow.
The tide is coming in and coming in fast. I don't know about you, Sam, but September, I spent 16 weeks in the US this year.
Yeah, so you're there a bit,
September, I was like, I think Kamala might. There's a big part
Don't get
of
me
me
started, John.
Of course, I never wanted that,
No.
and I'd
But
never.
that's what we were told, that she's going to win. And
Well,
there's no way.
and you're watching the volume.
Yeah.
Like every television and every new I'm in airports. I'm in hotels.
Yeah.
I'm in gyms.
Yeah.
And that's the
It's
face
all that's there.
that
Yeah.
is everywhere. And you're thinking, shoot, how can
Orange
you?
man bad.
Well, it was like one man against this massive
Yeah.
machine. And so you're thinking, how does it happen? And then you just watch those results and you start going, shoot, people have rebelled against the mainstream
Yeah,
media.
great parallel. Yeah.
And so I think now is the time for the church to say, if the rebellion is underway, get out of your wine press. That's what I think. I think now, get out of your wine press. And I also think, believe for big things. I think we're going to see a great awakening. If you had asked me in August, I was a bit melancholy.
Yeah, really.
Right now, I'm like,
fired up.
let's
Yeah, me
freaking
too.
go.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
We're gonna have a revival. I think. In my neighborhood, right? In my neighborhood, people are Trump lovers, and they're like Gold Coast bikini wearing. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's the Gold Coast and all of that.
Yeah,
But people are like, this is awesome. The woke thing's gone too far.
Yeah.
We're over this rubbish. And I think now is the time for the church to get its expectation, its boldness back. And I think we're going to see some. I think it could be incredible what happens next.
Yeah.
Because we're also getting transparency. So what's happening is we're getting transparency into just how deep the manipulation has been taking place of people, and that is incredibly important. Incredibly important for us to understand the machine that has been working against the church, against Christianity. I don't know. We're going in it, man. Sam, you let me there.
Man, I'm keen to go there. You know me. You know me. You now know me.
I'm finding you out.
Yeah. No, I just think there's a there's a seismic shift happening, and to talk about Trump for a second, it's not about Trump. It's about what he represents, and he's a figure, like him or not. I don't care. I don't like some of the things he says. Who cares? It's not about Trump. It's a shift. It's a seismic shift that's happening, and I think it's happening in the church too. I didn't know that about the growth rate of churches. That's really actually really exciting to hear.
Yeah, I think you'll start to see data on it soon.
Yeah, I'd love
Public
to.
data, but,
I'd love to.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not making that up.
No, can't imagine you would be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think like just to harp on the creative thing, like I think telling stories is the most powerful thing we can do. And again, I come back to the very start of the episode when I said that message you preach moved me to do something. And it's not until you see the stories of, the mothers who didn't get the abortion or the, whatever it is, it doesn't move you until you see the stories. And I think the church has such a unique opportunity to tell stories really well.
Yeah.
In an age where content needs to be good.
Yes.
Not super polished, good.
Yes.
So like a good story needs to be told, and it's a great opportunity for the church as this shift is happening to jump on and invest back into their creatives and see their creatives as people who can, not just sing a song to move people, but make a video or do some art, or make some flags or whatever it is, do some graphic designs, take some great headshots. Like, I don't know, whatever. If you don't know what we're referring to, it's inside joke. We'll tell you later.
One of the staff here took some headshots of me.
Yeah. So I just think,
they made me look really good.
Yeah. That camera's doing the work of it too.
It's challenging. I'm giving them bad stuff to work with.
Yeah. If you're not very inherently creative. You were saying before, you're not inherently like super creative in terms of you like doing pottery and singing songs and making videos and stuff. Or
I would say like I've always been extremely attuned to design.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
you know what's good.
I used to do graphic design a long time ago, many moons ago.
On Windows 93 or something like that?
No,
97?
I'm Mac from...
Yeah, let's go.
I'm 90s Mac. I'm like...
Okay.
I'm LC3, bro.
Yeah.
Pre the coloured ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I've literally had a Mac laptop since they started making Mac laptops.
Yeah, wow. Macintosh back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I've always been creative. I enjoy lots of mediums, fashion, design.
I did notice you looking dapper,
lighting.
I must say.
I don't know about that.
You hopped out of the car and John rocks up and he says, "Oh, my car's filthy. Yeah, don't look at it. I look at it's like the most pristine looking thing I've ever." It's like he's revving it. I'm like, "Wow, this thing's got a bit of go."
Well, 20 years ago now, my pastor came to speak for me, and when he arrived, I picked him up from the airport and I said, Pastor Paul, I'm sorry, my car's a bit dirty. And he said to me 20 years ago, he said, as with the car, so with the man, Johnny.
I got to go clean my car now.
What you saw today,
that's awesome.
In 20 years, that's the worst you've ever seen my car.
Oh, wow,
that's
really?
Yeah, as with the car, so with the man.
Oh, man.
So I mean, I think I've always, I am right probably at the creative end. So for me, like sermons are works of art. I see a sermon as a work of art, and I bring it to life. Like I bring it to life in every stage of its preparation.
Yeah. And an encouragement, I'm sure you get it all the time, but the sermons I've sat under when you've been speaking a handful of times, particularly that one, Far Away God, it made... I mean, I don't know if any of this would be here. I don't know if my life would be the same without that prompting. And so all the hard work and effort and time and sacrifice and ridicule that you go through, we probably wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for that. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
My last question, and then we'll wrap it up. If you could snap your fingers and have a creative gift, what would it be? You just snap your fingers, bang, you're the best at that thing that you're not good at right now.
Oh man, I honestly don't know.
Too many.
Photography.
Oh.
To take great headshots.
Well, so my daughter, is a phenomenal photographer.
Yeah, wow.
Like phenomenal.
Just has an eye.
And then I travel the world, and then if I post any photo that I took.
And how old's your daughter?
She's 20.
Oh, yeah.
So really, you just
she
want
knows.
your daughter to stop critiquing your
No.
iPhone.
I mean, my wife's not bad too.
Right.
Our daughter's significantly better than either of us, but yeah, I mean, I mean, I can see design, I can see lighting, I can probably understand whether a video is going to work. I've written songs, so I've done all that, and I write sermons, and I like art. I wouldn't mind being an architect if I wasn't in ministry. I love architecture.
Do you notice those things like when you're out?
100%. I love architecture.
Do you think we need more of that in church buildings, like the modern church?
We just got to stop building black boxes.
Thank you. Thank you. Get out of the industrial areas. Stop it. No, I'm kidding.
That's so true,
No,
isn't
I
it?
agree. I completely agree. Don't get in trouble, John.
I posted on social media and said if I was building another church building, it would be white.
Yes. Yeah.
And you notice that they are starting to. Mosaic have got one. Chad Veach has just bought out a wide auditorium. They're coming out. But the black box was created because in the 90s we couldn't see video projectors in color without
true.
black boxes.
Didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and you make it
true.
dark.
Yeah, true.
Because video projectors used to have 3 lenses. Young people,
OHP?
young people, this is true. But they used to have red, green, and blue lenses, 3 of them that would combine together. They had no power, and so we used to literally have these rear projection screens, and then around them you would put a black drape to try and isolate. So that's why auditoriums went black, guys. Everything's LED. We don't need black.
No.
Our screens are brighter than the sun. You know, like
Yeah, people are wearing sunglasses in the front row.
It's like, wow, can we
turn
I
it down?
can't
It's
see
on-
the singers. They're the silhouettes from the
Yeah,
LED
yeah.
wall.
It's like the screen's at 1%. We can't turn it down anymore.
Yeah,
Exactly.
literally. Yeah, it's
So we've
changed.
just got to stop building black boxes,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, it's true. Have you
Come
spent much
on.
time in London?
Not enough.
Oh man,
their
we've done a
churches.
trip there once a year. Yeah. Just the whole HTB network. With Nicky Gumbel and all of that. Yeah. Just they so basically the Anglican Church or the Church of England just give them all the buildings, all these old buildings, and they're stunning. And I remember walking into one. Where were we? Maybe in London City. I don't know. But it was from the 1600s, and there was bodies buried under there, like old priests and pastors. And I just remember walking in there. I just felt the presence of God. I was like, I haven't felt this for years. You just walk into a space like that with rich history and just the beauty. Like not how I would design my house, but just the most beautiful architecture. And it just draws your eyes to the Lord. And when I walk into a black box, I feel a bit depressed sometimes.
Have you been to Spurgeon's church?
No, I haven't.
That's worth a visit. Next time you go to London,
Okay.
go to Spurgeon's.
Where is that? Do you know? Do you remember?
No.
No,
London.
Is it in Oxford actually? Do you know?
No. All I know is I've been there, and
Yeah.
and you can stand in the pulpit. Now,
Oh, wow, that's
for me, I feel and see auditoriums. Like for me, it's
Yeah, true.
It's an extension of you.
Yeah, true.
And they call him the Prince of Preachers, of course. And when you stand in his pulpit, now it's been reduced, so it's not as big as it was.
Yeah, right.
But even in its reduced state, you can just see, okay.
Yeah, wow.
Because he designed that and
Wow.
built it, and there's not a bad seat in that house. Like he designed a really phenomenal, and I like seeing those things. Those things fascinate me. Yeah,
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you,
jumping
man.
on,
Love
my
you.
man. It was lovely to chat, and just really appreciate your time.
thank you. See you.
Awesome.
The kingdom created, our